So you're a guy. Eventually you may want to settle down, heaven forbid, start a family. Maybe you would just rather live that dink or dildo lifestyle. So I'm here to tell you there's been some fundamental changes over the last few decades that is making this reality a lot harder for a lot more men. The emasculation paradox is a term coined by the very first red-pilled author, Keone Galt, in his seminal work, an essay titled Game is Red Pill. But let's step back for a minute. Some background here. There's another piece by one of the biggest names in this space. If you've been here for a minute, you've probably heard of him. His name is Dalrymple. A quick primer on who he is. He describes himself as a happily married man with a sexy wife and 2 wonderful kids in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. He's very interested in how the post-feminist world impacts himself and his family, and he explores these kind of issues. So he has another field report called Threat Point. Now this first part is statistics heavy, so I'm going to leave a link down in the description if you want to follow down that particular rabbit hole. Bargaining in the shadow of the law, divorce rates, and family distress. In the literature on the economics of the family, there has been growing consensus on the need to take bargaining and distribution within marriage seriously. Such models in the family rely on a threat point to determine distribution within the household. The switch to a universal divorce regime redistributes power in a marriage, giving power to the person who wants out, and reducing the power previously held by the partner interested in preserving the marriage. If the divorce threat is sufficiently credible, it may directly affect intra-family bargaining outcomes without the option ever being exercised. These boots are made for walking, why most divorce filers are women. Because of the financial and social hardship faced after divorce, most people assume that generally husbands have instigated divorce since the introduction of no-fault divorce. Yet, women filed for divorce and are often the instigators of separation despite a deep attachment to their children and the evidence that many divorces harm children. Furthermore, divorced women in large numbers reveal that they are happier than when they were married. So the 3 takeaways from all these fancy science words are: women in every age demographic are the ones most likely to end a relationship, that the current paradigm of no-fault divorce has ended up ceding power from those who want to save a relationship and giving it to those who would rather end one. Oh, and the stated goal was to increase female happiness and end violence against women. But that part's a bit shady. Let's put a pin in that. We'll come back to it. So how does somebody get bunk science to obfuscate data, and why would they do that? This is pure Alex Jonesery on my part, but I imagine anybody who brings forward these kind of policies was most likely willing to pull the ends justify the means and say what they had to say. When you look into it, the case for no-fault divorce was made because it would reduce the incidence of female self-harm and violence against women. A great sales pitch, by the way, because nobody would be against that. The funny thing, though, is you look, and the data on self-harm comes from the National Center for Health Statistics, or the NCHS. So these guys examined the period from 1964 through 1996, and they robustly identify self-harm rates before the adoption of unilateral divorce laws and trace their evolution over the following years. The problem, though, is that the date that they started tracking these people by marital status didn't start till 1978. So at this point, they took a correlation and made it into a causation. And they knew they had an issue. It's a very fancy word that they use to describe it called endogeneity. I think I'm pronouncing that right. So in a marriage where women are more likely to leave and more likely to be given more power in the relationship by wanting to leave as opposed to the person who wants to stay, the consequence is there's a lot more broken homes. And now we get to the emasculation paradox. So a guy knowing all this has to stand up for himself and not cede power, because that's the only way he actually gains any amount of respect or desire in his relationship. Now, some guys found this out after they got married, and they got to make the best out of an unoptimal situation. Other guys are young and they figured this out early and they're figuring out they need to find out what to do next. And a third group of guys, and again, other guys aren't even attractive enough to be brought to this marriage dance with the option of divorce. They use this as a shroud to hide all that unattractive behavior that they refuse to acknowledge among themselves. Sorry, you're not even worth divorcing. So I'm here to talk to attractive people about serious topics with awesome solutions. And enough nerd talk, let's talk strategy. The strategies. All threats are honored. Operation Scorched Earth. The idea that 100% dad, that's there 50% of the time, is better than half a dad all the time. Finally, happiness matters. Nothing makes girls happier than winning the prize that somebody else wants. So tons of guys know this scenario. Girl gets mad, maybe you did something, maybe you didn't. Divorce gets used as a threat and the guy backs off. Stop that. The trick to playing chicken like this is not to fear a collision. If she threatens you, you warn her once. If she continues to threaten you, you file yourself. This creates two scenarios. One, if the girl was actually gonna divorce, she probably wouldn't have let you know about it until she's already moved out and taken the kids. Two, it's being used as threat point to emasculate you, in which case, all threats are honored. It's a sound strategy. Now, it's a hardcore boundary, but this is serious. This is the equivalent of somebody threatening you with jail time for a crime you didn't commit. So charge me or drop the charges. Just don't play games. Operation Scorched Earth. I talk about this in a different video, so go check it out. It's on my channel. I'm not going to waste your time by covering old ground here. You may not get a say in the status of your marriage or subsequent divorce, but you do get a say in what kind of man you are before, during, and after. I mean, kids have no frame of reference. The only thing they know is the example you set for them. And missing a lot of them growing up, it sucks, it really does, but sometimes you just have to deal with the hand you've been given. So the question is, do you want to be a good dad or do you want to raise good kids? Because those aren't the same thing. And don't worry if you don't know what that means. Relax, your kids will. And the last part, this leverages the post that I just had before this one on game. Nobody wants to win a prize that nobody else wants. If you watch my video on game, I mentioned pre-selection briefly. Basically, humans are hardwired to be lazy. And it's very difficult for a girl to judge each individual man on whether he's good or bad from a sexual selection standpoint. So what they do is they have this little shortcut. And they see if this man is surrounded by other women who are taking interest in him, then that lets them know that somebody's already done that mental load of judging, and she takes that as a huge signal of higher value. Well, if women seem to like leaving because they're not happy, well then be the prize. Nobody gets off a moving train. And you know what? Even if I'm wrong, and even if you're a great catch and she still leaves, who do you think is going to be better off? It's a sound strategy whether it works or not. So to sum up, Keone Galt, the very first red pill poster, I guess, in this space, came up with a term called the Emasculation paradox. And this describes something that was leveraged by Dalrock, that the legal system is used as a threat point to give power to the people most likely to leave a relationship, as opposed to those people who want to maintain it, which is predominantly women. And he describes a situation where guys are so worried about this threat point being used against them that they tend to cede power in hopes that it won't be used against them. When in reality, the best strategy is to always hold your dignity as sacrosanct. Your self-respect matter more than anything. And you have to act as if you still have the power in your life in order to make it less likely that these tools are going to be used against you. I've talked about a few strategies you can use for that. Always honor all threats. Be prepared. Operation Scorched Earth if thing goes to the mat. Be aware that being 100% of a dad 50% of the time is better than being half a dad all the time. And that nobody gets off a moving train. Being attractive and not being unattractive is a great way to offer pre-selection, which is one of the strongest tools you can use on both maintaining relationships as well as bouncing back after a failed one and getting into another one, or at least having the options to more often. So on that note, I want to thank you guys for listening in on this one. I'm going to give a shout out right now. Guys on Patreon, wonderful group of guys. We just got the forums up and running and we're swapping notes amongst each other just like man was supposed to. It's a nice little online locker room. But on that note, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care.